Howdy folks, this is Hooch. Just wanted to make a quick video explaining how to make underground structures in Arma. And recently I published a modded building pack with all original assets, and as part of that building pack there's a subway system included, shown here. Here's a piece of it, and as well as a hotel with an underground parking area included. So just wanted to show you all how to kind of achieve this effect, like illusion of an underground system within Arma, because it is just that. It's an illusion. It's not truly underground as you might think. And so just wanted to quickly explain that. So this system really works for maps where you have access to the terrain that you can actually sculpt. And by that, I mean, like, you can come over here, take the terrain tool and actually adjust it like that. So this is not going to work so well on maps that you don't have access to that, or like vanilla maps that you can't actually sculpt. You need to be able to actually displace the terrain level of the map to be able to achieve this effect. So, just throwing that out there early so you don't go chasing down a rabbit hole. There is kind of a different way of achieving it, which is illustrated in this kind of base vanilla asset. That's the bunker. But this specific asset is actually sitting above the ground level, and then it's just using textures to kind of make it look like it's underground, but technically this whole thing is above ground, and it's just blending whatever the ground texture is up onto the top of it to make it look like grass, or cobblestone, or we have seafloor here, whatever. Okay, so to achieve this illusion, you need kind of 3 different pieces, and I've got these pulled out just to kind of illustrate to you how I'm doing it. And you can think of any of these underground structures as just like a sandwich. It's kind of how I think of it. So for the subway system, we have 3 main parts, and you've got the middle piece here, the filling of your sandwich, if you will. That's going to be the part that you want to be able to access as a player. So you want to be able to walk through it, drive through it, whatever. That's going to be the middle layer of your sandwich. So in this case, it's a tunnel right here, just a straight piece of tunnel. Your top section is going to be just a cover for what goes over the kind of the middle and the bottom section. So this is just from kind of a bird's eye view, just gonna replace the ground that you're moving out of the way to place this thing underground. Then the final piece is what's actually going to allow you to place this underground and keep it accessible. And I have it shown in white here, but I typically just apply a transparent texture to this just to make it invisible. But all that this does is just move the actual ground surface out of the way so that you can make this whole thing ground level and still access the piece that you want to access. Similarly with the hotel, we've got the hotel itself, which you can kind of see is highlighted here, the edges of it. And it's pretty basic. It just has like the actual above ground structure, and then its own ground level here with just the kind of the sidewalk around it, and then it also includes the part that you want to be underground. So in this case, it's this little parking garage area. And so that's all one model, like the skeleton of the hotel, not the glass and all that stuff, but the skeleton of the hotel, and this kind of foundation block. That's all one model. And then similar to the tunnel, we've got this ground blend level. And this is more of like a skirt or like a wraparound kind of bumper thing on this model, because it's not just like a linear tube. It's, a structure that we need to blend all the way, 360 degrees around it. So that's what that piece is for. And then similar to the tunnel, we have this underground piece here, which I have as a default material, but again, it's typically transparent. And that is to create the cavity within the terrain to place the other objects. So you can kind of think of it like these two bottom pieces move the existing ground out of the way. Then you've got this structure that you actually want to access. And this, it's a tunnel. And this, it's the bottom part of this building here. And then on top of that, you have what you're going to use to cover up the area that you moved out of the way to accommodate those underground structures. So here we've got two ground blend pieces and a road. And then for the hotel, we just have a ground blend piece that surrounds the whole structure. I've just got these here just so you can kind of see how they're set up or organized. So earlier, I also referenced a vanilla bunker that kind of uses a similar technique to create this illusion of being underground. And the key to that being a texture. You're probably like, what is the texture? So here it is. You can see it happening here on these ground pieces here. It's actually taking a look at my satellite map that I used to kind of create a grid to help me make maps. So if I actually move this piece, you can see that red line moves off it or on it, depending on if it's above the red line or not. Same thing with like grass or any other surface texture. So if I want to place, cobblestones here or something like asphalt, it becomes asphalt. This one's showing how it blends both asphalt and the default terrain material there. So that's just to help the blend. And the actual texture that does that is called default _ matte terrain obj _ tear or terrain shadows. There's another version that doesn't include the terrain shadows, and you can use that one, but it just creates kind of a harsher blend than the version with terrain shadows. So that's kind of a key to the whole illusion, is that you place this ground blend layer, apply this texture to it, and it helps blend all of the surface textures from around your underground structure up to the very edges of it, without having to have actual like terrain there. You're just recreating the terrain that you're displacing. Show you the model version of it. Here's the tube or the tunnel in Plasticity, which is the program that I use for all my modeling. And you can see the underground level that is used to displace ground, shown here in red. The middle part of the sandwich, the tunnel that you actually want to access, is here in yellow. And then the top section is actually 3 components. It's 2 ground blend pieces, and then the roadway on top. But I've got them color coded here just so you can kind of maybe see a little bit easier how they're organized. Another key to the ground is that you should create some kind of a blend factor. So instead of just having like a block here, I've got this kind of taper to it and then a bevel, so that the the ground hits right here, it's not coming into a harsh corner where it has to go up and then over. It just blends kind of nicely into this already contoured piece here. Okay, so how these things are configured within the actual engine, it does have a big effect. And we'll start with just the very bottom piece, the underground level. And you're going to want to set this up as a SCR destructible building entity. It can be pretty simple besides that. You can see this only has mesh object and rigid body applied. That's just the basics for actually being able to collide with an object in Infusion. But the part that's actually doing the work is just the class of this prefab, that being destructible building entity. And we need that because it includes this setting here called adjust height map. And I've got that turned off right now just so I'm not disturbing the area beneath it. But this example over here where it's turned on, you can see what that does is it creates the actual trench or cavity that's needed to place your underground structure inside of. Similarly over here, the underground area goes just outside of the actual structure that I'm placing underground, but not all the way outside the border of my ground blend here. So it kind of sits just outside the perimeter of the area that I need to push the ground out of. And so those are all set up as destructible building entities. I've got something else highlighted here, and they're set to adjust height map. So if I turn this on, you can see that ground comes up. But if I push this whole prefab, I kind of snap that there, still have that kind of previous ground there, but if I flicker the adjust height map on and off, you can see after we've placed it at the ground level, we've got this new trench here that the tube sits inside of. So that's kind of how that's accomplished on both of these objects, whether you have just a more linear piece that maybe, for like this road, for instance, we'll have like another piece that, might come off here and continue the road, continue the tunnel beneath it. And it needs to stay open at the end. Another kind of quick tip here is that whenever you do kind of copy paste an object that's displacing the ground like this, sometimes it doesn't automatically displace the ground. So you're going to run into some issues where it's like we've got this terrain right here blocking our tunnel. So you're like, what the heck? Why is that happening? Just flicker the adjust height map and it'll displace the area that it needs to. So sometimes if you set like a prefab down and it's maybe rotated incorrectly or something like that, it can be best to turn off the adjust height map first, place it how you need it to be placed, and then turn the adjust height map back on. Another important part of that is the fall off width of the height map. You want that to be as little as possible for something like this, and that way it creates a really sharp depression in the ground rather than like a smooth kind of ditch. And that way it's just, it's not affecting the terrain over here. If you were to have another object over here, it's just taking out the smallest area that it needs to. So just another thing to kind of note there. The next piece that you're going to, the next part of the prefab is the tunnel itself, or the building itself, whatever it needs to be. As far as my tunnel goes, I'm just using a generic entity. This really just needs to be collidable. There's no like destructive elements that need to happen in here. There could be, but currently there's not. It just needs to be like a physicalized object in the world. So it's a generic entity. It's got a mesh body and a rigid body. You don't even really need the world subscene component. So that's that, pretty basic. You can get as complex as you want with this, but just to keep things simple for the video, that's kind of how it's working here. Whereas on the tower, you can see it's an actual destructible building entity. It's got destructible components, all that stuff. So it can get pretty complex if you want it to. And then above that, we've got our ground level, which again, in this example, is just another generic entity with mesh object and rigid body, just to physicalize that collider so you can actually drive on it without falling through it. Very basic there. And then I don't have it applied here because it's not as big of a deal, but especially where you have larger areas of ground that are displaced. I'll show you another example of this in a second, but where you have, maybe bigger borders off the sides of your building or something like that, you can run into an issue where once you place this, like the actual ground texture itself will like flicker sometimes if you don't have this set up correctly, and it can make it look like you're just walking on like thin air. So if you're running into that problem, clearly you don't always need it to be set up this way. Like in this example, it's set up just as generic entity. But in this example, we've got a SCR, indestructible environmental entity. It's a mouthful, but if you apply this class, it's going to make sure that none of the flickering happens or anything like that, and it just works. This is this is the same class that the devs use for like large like pieces of mountains and stuff like that. That's like not sculpted into the terrain. It's like they modeled like a large like ridge line or something like that, and they place that in the game as an actual mesh. Those are set up as indestructible environmental entities. So just keep note of that. That's an important one. And really, that's it. The only thing that you need to keep track of is your textures and making sure that the area encompassing the underground area that you want to have underground is set up as a destructible building entity, and that it's displacing the height map or adjusting the height map. And that's pretty much it. Some other things to kind of note as you're working with this that I've noticed is the ground itself, as you displace it, like the resolution of the ground itself, you can't just like displace like a tiny little area. Just to show you that, if I place this 90-degree turn here, you'll notice I've got on this one a much larger ground piece here. You're like, whoa, we only need to cover up this little area where the tube is. Why do you need this huge ground piece? And that's because since this is a turn and the like the terrain itself is kind of a lower resolution as far as what you can displace, it will actually, like if I turn this off, this ground level off, it'll displace this whole square. So that's a little bit annoying because you have to make some huge ground blend areas like this. But just something to consider is if your underground structure turns at all like that, one option is to either split the actual object in half, whatever's displacing the ground. So in this case, you would cut this underground piece in half. And so half of it would displace this side, half would displace this side. And in that case, you'd have like maybe a square over here that's still at ground level, and this whole square would be at ground level, and you just have like a rectangle over here displaced, rectangle over here displaced. That way you might not have to use as much of the ground blend, but it also creates a lot more modeling work, so just kind of keep that in mind. But that's how I'm kind of accomplishing this, is larger ground blend textures here that just cover up that whole area. And this is the component that was giving me the most trouble with the flickering issue, and how I determined that using the indestructible environmental entity is the way to go. So just keep that in mind. So that's pretty much it. But there might still be a question of like, okay, I can create this underground tube. Great. How do I access it? You just have to model that into the mesh that your player will be interacting with. So like in this subway station example, I've got the road, kind of the cover area right here. And then I've got a separate model for the tunnel beneath it, just as the other example, but this one's a little bit more built out. So it's got a staircase and some other stuff in here, which I'll show you. So you just have to model a hole through what you're kind of replacing the ground with that you can walk through. And so voila, now I'm quote unquote underground. I can walk up and down the stairs, and now I'm at surface level again. Similarly with the hotel, we've got the underground parking structure is like built into the frame of the hotel. So to access that, I've created this ramp and just punched a hole through the mesh, modeled a floor and all that stuff, and put that into the collider to make this accessible. There's also a whole bunch of other stuff that you can do. Say like that bunker over there, it utilizes like portals and like box volumes and some other stuff to really help with like making the lighting feel right. So it's like you can tell in my structures that they're a little bit bright still, kind of in the underground areas. If you build your model correctly and you actually use portals and stuff as the devs intend, you can get much more of like a cavernous lighting effect, which I'll show you on this. So by contrast, here's the vanilla bunker, and it's set up, and you can see that they are using what's called portals and like a box volume. So as I walk in here, it's like real dark. My lighting might adjust a little bit, and I can't see outside very well anymore. That's using portals and like probes and box volumes and stuff. And that is the part that I have not quite figured out yet. So you can take these structures a little bit further as far as their realism goes, make them feel really dark, and it also affects the sound. So if you fire a shot in there or whatever, it's going to sound different than if you fired it outside, and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's all I got for you today, guys. If you have any questions, please feel free to put those down in the comments below. I will try to get to them as best I can. I'm also on Discord. I helped a few people on Discord from my last video, so if you need help with something in particular, shoot me a comment. We can trade some DMs or like video chat or whatever, and go over with what you're needing to do. But yeah, I hope this was helpful, and if you found value in this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing, because I'll be posting more of this type of content up. Alrighty, thanks for watching.